In this lesson, we're going to learn how to add some basic materials to our car. Alright, so at this part, we are finished with the modeling, and you may want to add some color to your models, whether this is for a portfolio or something like that. And a lot of the times, as a modeler, you are responsible for the materials or textures that are applied to that specific model. Now, as we are not going to be covering this in depth, I will just kind of give you a little bit of a basic workflow for creating materials, ways that you can create materials in 3ds Max, and then in the next lesson we'll take a look at a basic UV workflow for creating textures for a specific model, in this case our RC car. So let's just get started with kind of getting an idea of what colors we want to use for our car. So I'm going to select the car shell itself, and I'm going to use our materials, and I'm going to drag in just a standard material, and I'm going to bring this below our materials that we've already created throughout this course here. So I'm going to double click on this, and you'll see our parameters show up here on the right side, and I'm going to go to my diffuse color and choose the color that I want for the shell of my car, and I'm going to use kind of this bright green color. I'm going to hit OK on that, and in here I can also begin to adjust the specular level. Now the specular level, okay, is going to give us the properties of this particular object. So is it like a really shiny plastic, a really glossy plastic, or is it something that's going to spread light? That's all going to be dependent on the specular level, how much light is going to be collected on the object, and then in what direction that light is going to bounce. So if you have a higher glossiness, that light is going to bounce directly off of that surface. So this kind of gives us that high gloss plastic surface. So we can call this car shell. So if we rename this, I'm going to call it car shell underscore MAT for material, just so that way I clearly know what this is named for. And then with our car shell selected, okay, we can hit assign to selection. You can see how that's been applied. Let's go ahead and create another one like this, and we're going to do it right below here. Let me double click on this icon to minimize that again. And this is going to be for our cover. So I'm going to double click on this and change its color to blue. So let's do kind of a true blue there, and we'll adjust the specular level and then also our glossiness. Now if it helps, you can come over here and select the values here, so it looks like 50 and 58. So if we want to make sure that that matches, we'll type those values in there. Okay, let's assign that to our selection. There we go. Let's go ahead and apply these materials to multiple objects. So you can select multiple objects and just assign those. Let's take this guy and assign our green material. And then let's say that we want like a black plastic material for our frame. So we're going to choose our diffuse color. We'll use black. And again, we're going to use the 50 and 58 on that. And we will assign that to our frame. And we'll probably do that to our wheels as well, but you'll notice that we have those set as a group, so we don't want to assign that as a group itself. So a couple of things just to watch out for. We'll do that to the carriage as well. We'll assign that. The bumper, and we'll take a look at anything else. Probably the axles. The axles are not going to be metal. They're like a plastic covering for that. The wheels, like I said, are all grouped together, so we don't want to do that. The springs are all grouped and things like that. So now we come to the point to how do we deal with grouped objects? How do we apply materials to those? Well, what we can do, I'm going to apply that black plastic here as well. What we can do here is we can select our group, go to Edit, Group, and then Open, and this will allow us to have individual access to the pieces of that group. So now I can assign to that, and we can do that all the way across our object. Okay, now I don't want to do it to the treads or anything like that, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that one open. Let's select this guy, and as a matter of fact, let's select all of these. Let's go to Edit, Group, and Open, so that way they're all open there. Let's select all of the pieces that we want to have that black plastic material on. And then simply assign that. Okay, we could do that the same thing for our springs. So let's select all of those, And let's go to Group and Open. And it looks like I may have some of these grouped a little bit differently. I didn't realize that I had some of those nested groups there. So there's our spring. Let's go ahead and select that spring and let's open that group. Okay. So now I can come in and I can select the individual pieces that I want to be plastic here. And if you want to do different colors on those pieces, that's totally fine. You're more than welcome to do that. We have our connector piece. And then also down here. And I'll go ahead and I'll assign those. So you kind of get in the idea of how materials work. Now, once we have all of these applied, there's a couple of things that you want to watch out for. One specifically would be changing any of these materials that we've already established. If you've applied materials to all of your objects and you go to changing any of these other materials, that will actually go ahead and change the rest of your objects in that that have that material applied. So you want to be careful with that. And I'll show you an example of that here in just a moment. Let's just get this last spring material applied. And let's assign that. And let's make sure that we have everything that we want to have that black plastic material applied to. And I think we're pretty good here. We've even got that on our remote. Pretty happy with that. And let's go ahead and select the pieces, like the surface pieces. I'm going to add that green material to that. And we have these pieces. Those all look good. Happy with that. Let's see, and then we have the tires, and then we have all the little metal pieces that are going to be on our car. So I'm going to create another material for this. So for like the metal pieces, we can use another standard material, or we could use an arch viz material, but you'll see that we only have these standards. So sometimes we might want to use the mental ray materials. Now to be able to access those, we need to make sure that we're using the mental ray renderer to render our image. So let's go to Render Setup, and let's go down and let's go to Assign Renderer, and then we're going to change our default renderer to NVIDIA Mental Ray. Now it's NVIDIA because we have an NVIDIA graphics card on here. And we'll go ahead and close that, and then go into our materials again, and here you can see that we have a whole nother list of materials that we can use under Mental Ray. So I could use things like Mental Ray Metal and things like that. Now, with these objects, you want to be careful because some of these materials use texture maps to get their look. So, for example, like the Autodesk Metal, if I were to drag and drop this in, you see that I have two maps that have been applied to this. If my objects are not UV'd, those maps will not appear properly. And you'll get some warning saying that the material requires objects to be UV'd, and it's going to show you a list of the objects that are not UV'd that these materials are applied to, and you'll have to UV those for this to appear properly. So you want to be careful with which materials you're using. If they have maps applied, they probably will not show up properly. So just to keep going with these materials, I'm going to take this one and let's give it a very high gloss or high specular level, and then take our glossiness down a little bit. Now metal, depending on how well it's polished, will have a really high gloss, which is mirror-like, or it'll have a lower gloss, which will allow light to spread. Now you also have the ability of changing your shader from something like blend to metal, and that could give you a different result altogether. So this might be something a little more of what you're looking for. Okay, so just make those changes as needed. So with something like this, I could select all of my objects that are supposed to have that metal material. So in this case, it's going to be my connector and all my screws and washers. Okay, and you can apply those to this. So I'm going to go ahead and just select one set here, and then you can go through and you can put those materials on there if you like, and we'll assign that. And there we go. So now we have that material, and it looks a little off in here. Now whenever it renders, it's going to look a little different, so just be careful of that. And then finally, to end with my tires, I'm going to use a rubber tire in this case. So I'm going to use this Arch and Design. I'm going to drag and drop that in. This Arch and Design material is really great because it gives you the ability to use a template. So if you expand this, you get a whole list of materials that you can use. So in this case, I have rubber. So I'm going to use that, and it's been applied here. And I'm going to select my tires and apply those all the way around. Okay, so let's make sure that we have the tire treads, the tire itself, and then we'll assign that. So that has now been assigned, and you can go through and you can start to fill out the rest of those materials as needed. So pick out some colors, assign those. Remember to close your groups if you see these pink bounding boxes when you're finished. Now in the next lesson, we're going to discuss the process of UVing. Now what UVing is going to allow us to do is apply a custom texture to our model. So instead of using flat material colors like this, we may want to have something like a glass texture on this material. We may want to have stickers or something like that across our body. So in the next lesson, we're going to just go through some UV basics and learn how to apply those textures.